forgot my clicker. That's okay. We're off to a good start.
Yeah.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to the last talk at FinTech DevCon. I've learned a ton and been having a great time. I hope you guys have too. I'm not going to ask because I'm on stage and you're not. But we're going to be talking about translating card auths, emerging user expectations. It's actually really, it's like, here's everything I hate about neobanks and how we can all do a lot better. Who I am, most people know me from Twitter. So I'm at Maia Bittner on Twitter. I've also founded 2 companies and sold 2 companies. I do some other stuff. I'm an aspiring bidet influencer, but haven't gotten there yet. Really, we're talking about how much I love cards, though. So I love cards, and I really always have. My first card was the PayPal debit MasterCard, which I had to lie about my age to get because you had to be 18, and I was not. And when I got it in the mail, I read the entire little booklet that came with it and highlighted what I felt were relevant portions and then translated that into a cheat sheet for how I was planning on using the card. And I checked it constantly. My mom said, you know, Maya, most people don't check their bank balances multiple times per day. They just kind of let it sit. But I was so interested in it, and I've loved it ever since then. And, 3 years ago, I started really digging into how card transactions work. And card transactions, it turns out, are pretty confusing. So it felt wildly complex to me, nuanced and changing. It felt like there was so much data and that there was even cultural norms about the patterns of transactions that happened. I intentionally have the "is your teen texting about" meme up here because that's how I felt. I felt like I was spying on something where a lot was happening, but I didn't know how to interpret it. So I have a pretty standard way for learning about new topics, which is I do what I can on my own, and then I ask someone who probably knows about it who's accessible to me. And my secret goal, I'm telling you how I do this, is to appear like knowledgeable and prepared and charming and interesting enough so that they not only have their eyes light up and tell me everything they know about it, but they also introduce me to their go-to person to learn about this. And so I started to do that with card transactions. I talked to some people, but I kind of fell flat on my face. And this was the first time that my go-to plan wasn't working. Basically, everyone said, well, what is there to know? Like there's an authorization, and then it gets approved. A couple days later, the transaction settles. It's kind of not that complicated. And I was like, okay, I'm pretty smart. And if I feel like this is really hard, but everyone else says it's not that complicated, like what am I missing here? Okay, so 3 years have gone by, and I've realized, I think I understand now why I got the reaction I did. It's because no one knows how card transactions work. And it kind of makes sense, but we're missing so much. There's so much data there. The merchants are trying to explain so much about what they're trying to do with $0 authorizations and partial reversals and all that. And you and your merchant are on the same time, like the same side. You share a customer together and are working together to try and create a great experience for them. And I even think it's right, as mobile banking apps, we have so much data. We know so much, and we could create amazing experiences for our users, and we don't. Just one random idea. You know if your user had a card in Apple Pay, and if they lost their card, activated a new one, but didn't add a new card to Apple Pay. You know that. You have all the data you need to know that sequence of events happened. And then, if after that, they use Apple Pay, and it gets declined for an incorrect CVV, you know that too. But what all of us are doing is we send our users a message that says, your $9 purchase was declined. Maybe, if we're super on it, we say your $9 purchase was declined because you used the wrong CVV. And our users are like, okay, but there was an Apple Pay transaction, there was no CVV. And so it's breaking trust with them. They're like, okay, my mobile banking app doesn't understand what's going on. I have $100 in there, and this $9 transaction is being declined. And we could be giving them the next steps there. We could be saying, hey, we sent you a new card and you activated. By the way, we know you keep your card in Apple Pay, and you're going to have to activate it there as well. And so by refusing to become payments experts, us tech people who are now all running these like mobile banking apps, it's not that no one has to be a payments expert or that you can outsource it to Lithic or Marqeta or Moov. If you're not becoming a payments expert, you're forcing that burden onto your users. So now, your users who are tired and stressed out, and you're competing to be top of wallet and dependable and trustable, your users have to understand that when they add a card to Apple Pay, that's not some kind of dynamic pointer to their current account, but is actually a tokenized instantiation of their PAN, CVV, and expiration date that they need to update every time they get a new card. And it kind of makes sense why this is. So the world used to be really different. This is my best guess is what it was like shopping back when credit cards were invented. And this is not the first credit card, it's not the first Bank of America card, but it's kind of the most recognizable one. And people had a very different relationship to their cards back then, right? Most cards were charge cards, so not revolving credit or debit cards, but you paid the full balance at the end of the month. You had a statement of all your settled transactions at the end of the month. And authorizations took a really long time. So up to 30 minutes. The way that authorizations would work is you'd go to the store counter, you'd say, I want to buy this for $200. They would call the bank on your card, and your bank every morning printed out a list of every customer and their current balance, and would go through that list and then either approve or decline the transaction based on that list. So it would take up to a half an hour depending on how busy your bank was, and you would just stand there at the counter. Today, when we think of banking, it looks a little bit more like this, right? And that's because technology has changed quite a bit. And even, I know I was in charge of writing the title for this slide. It's like that's so passive, right? Like we, the people in this room, have worked very hard to actively advance technology and bring all these cool new features to the space. So it's like now that everyone has a mobile phone that they carry around with them, they can know an up-to-the-date balance in their account. They get instant notifications of their transactions. They can turn on and off their card transactions, and all kinds of other stuff, as you can see here. So there's all kinds of cool new features. And here's the thing: some people thought would add some features and make it easier or better for people to have cards, but actually, people are now relating to their cards in an entirely new way, and we see entirely new behavior with these new features. So this is a screenshot that I got off Chase's website. It talks about a cool feature, lock and unlock a credit or debit card. And it describes if you lost or misplaced your card, it's easy to instantly stop purchases from their mobile app. Now, this is cool idea, and I think this all kind of resonates with us, right? You've probably left a card in your pocket or something, and you weren't sure that it's at the restaurant, so you don't want to go through the hassle of ordering a new one, but you want to prevent there from being any unauthorized transactions while you're still looking for it. It's a very cool feature. I think most apps now have this feature. It's provided a huge amount of customer value. The only thing is, there's a lot of people who they're not using it like this anymore. This is not really an accurate portrayal of how this feature is mostly used. So this is actually a live footage of a Chase customer turning on and off their card transactions in-app. And it's a totally new way of using this feature. So many users actually keep their card transactions turned off by default. And they don't turn them on until they're waiting in line at the cash register. And they swipe it online, they make the transaction, and then they turn it off again. It's actually extremely cool, right? We're people here, we're trying to help Americans become more financially stable. And they're doing it. They're using technology to prevent unauthorized transactions or transactions they forgot about, to spend less money, take control over their funds. They're doing it, but the big banks don't get this. The new financial technology companies that facilitate access to bank accounts through mobile apps also don't really get this, right? This is buried in a settings screen. I'm not really a product person, so I'm sure you have a product person on your team. You could ask them for ideas here. But I feel like there must be so many options for how we can make this awesome and easy for people. If we knew this was how they wanted to use their card, could we put this on the home screen of the app instead of in the settings page? Or could we have their location. They are our customer. We have a mobile app on their phone. It's like, could we turn on card transactions when we see them walk into a store and turn them off automatically when they walk out? It's like, why do we make it so hard for people when we're trying to make their lives easier and be their number one destination for where they choose to spend? There's like big impacts here, right? So this is just a tweet that I found where someone says, they keep their card off by default, as many people do, and when they forget to turn it back on again, the cashier thinks they don't have any money, which, right, like Americans wouldn't be paying $12 billion a year in overdraft fees if they weren't sometimes actually out of money. And so it's a very real concern. It's like a very embarrassing experience that people are actually having because we're not supporting them better in the way that they want to use their cards. So there are some that get it. I actually just talked to some Gico engineers. This is Gico. I love their app. What they have is dips are on by default and swipes are off by default. And you can choose to go in the app and you can turn on swipes and it starts this 30-minute countdown timer, which I think is really elegant, right? It's like, well, then you only have to turn them on. You're probably going to make your transaction sometime in the next 30 minutes, and then it'll turn off automatically. And in addition, it's a really subtle way to communicate to users, like, hey, swipe transactions are really fraudulent. Your card might be skimmed. We don't want to let just anyone run a swipe transaction on your card. And so you're doing subtle education through the UI. So I think that's quite elegant. To recap, number one, no one knows how transactions work. And number two, we suck at supporting users interacting with their cards in a modern way. So I'm going to go through some examples. I called it 10 things I hate about how card companies communicate transaction data. It's not quite 10, don't worry, and we'll go through them quickly. But it really is, and it's like the reason it's just transaction data, which is so core to your banking experience, and it's just communication. I'm just really talking about UI. We do much harder things as an industry. We can design better products for people to use our apps. We can fix the UI here. So the first thing, I'm sure this will be a familiar topic to most of you, is merchant names. Now, I'm not even talking about do you use a third-party service to clean up your merchant names. There might be some here today. I'm sure their sales reps are very friendly. You could chat with them, or regular expressions or things like that. I'm even just talking about, given that you might be cleaning up the merchant name, how can you empower your users to still understand what's happening and communicate things to them? So a recent example, I bought a day pass to the Crater of Diamonds mine admission, State Park, on my card. And so I got a push notification. It says $7.30 at TLP star. And then there's a movie emoji. And then it goes on to say your current balance is whatever. So, oh yeah, I forgot to say, so I've anonymized some of these. I haven't anonymized all of these. I do want to emphasize that my examples are not here's the worst players in the industry or the best players of the industry or anything comprehensive like that. I think we are all in a position where we could level up our game here and do a lot better. And so I just picked these ones kind of randomly, so please do not pay too much attention to the brands of anonymized some, but more about the actual experience. So TLP, movie. Doesn't seem very similar to Crater of Diamonds State Park, right? So as a user, I'm thinking, well, did this app send my money to the right place? When I look at it next week, am I going to recognize this? Am I going to be able to account for it in my budgeting? It doesn't really make any sense to me. And if you're very observant, which I was rewarded as a child for being, so I'm quite observant, you might notice that here at the bottom, it says events processed by some sort of icon, ticket leap. And then, if you read the Visa Merchant Data Standards Manual, which I do recommend, you might notice that there's a part that mentions if you use a payment facilitator, that you can combine the payment facilitator or an abbreviation with the merchant name separated by an asterisk. And so that's almost certainly what's happening here is we have companies trying to clean up the merchant name. They did so poorly, right? So we have only the payment facilitator, and in fact, only an abbreviation of the payment facilitator. And there's no place inside this app where you can find out any more information, right? Like location or name or phone number. This is the only information that I have about this transaction. So don't do this. It's fine to clean up transactions, but you'll never be right 100% of the time. Because merchants, truly, they're crazy. Like, they can put anything into that merchant acquirer field, so it's going to be crazy. But you'll be correct some percentage of the time, and you have to hedge for the time when you're not. And you have to give users the data about what's happening to their money. So some apps that I really like how they do this. This one says Merchant Sushi Rito. That looks really nice. Like, it's like we know that this is a cleaned up merchant name, which is fine. They also have a less cleaned up merchant name down in the notes section of the app. So you can really learn, oh, okay, if I wasn't sure which location of Sushi Rito I went to, it has it here. More importantly, if they messed up that cleanup process, then you would be able to understand what's actually happening here. I also really like this app. So Bellingham Water Sewer, that's actually a name that I chose. They let you set whatever merchant name you want, something that's going to use this edit button, something that's going to be easy for you to remember and account for in your budgeting. And then they keep a lot more data on that screen at all times, which I like. So merchant names are hugely important. This is literally where people are spending their money. It's very hard to clean up. Lots of people have talked about that. It's very important. There's lots of services that you can use. Even if you're not cleaning up, make sure that they have access to that data. Really, even best, it's like you can parse out so much of that data. If you read that Visa Merchant Data Standards, right, it usually has like specific characters in the merchant field that are going to indicate to you whether something is the phone number or the address or which data element it is. So use all that stuff. Next one, purchase notifications. Okay, I recently bought something at Starbucks and I got this notification. It says your transaction of $5.93 at Starbucks, store 29097, has been put on hold. I don't know what that means. We'll inform you if it is processed or declined by the merchant. I also don't know what that means. Like, only if maybe Starbucks is out of something might they then reverse this. So this is sort of a crazy notification. Like, this is very much a developer-centric, which is like, I have put the funds for this transaction on hold off of their account so that they can be used to pay for this. But the transaction's not on hold. And further, I'm standing there, and I don't know if I need to tell the barista to stop making my brown sugar oat milk shaken espresso because my card isn't going to go through. And if this is the only card I have, or even just the card I prefer to use, I'm going to feel bad about that. This process was declined by the merchant. It's like this stuff also doesn't make sense. This push notification I love. The dollar amount is the first thing you see. It's the most important thing. It has the merchant name. It tells me my current balance, which is unfortunately negative. But one has no overdraft fees. So the merchant name could use some help per our earlier discussion. But yeah, it's like this notification is what I want. It like happens quickly. I know the purchase transaction happened. I'm not left being confused or worried that I'm going to have to tell the barista to stop doing it. And honestly, doing these notifications well, it not only helps your customer be more loyal and look to you to be top of wallet, right? But it's also going to change your disputes. They're going to recognize transactions more. They're going to be confident that your card is sending the right amount of money to the right place more often of the time. I have some ISO 8583 here. I'm not going to focus on that. I was going to do more of this for the talk, but rest assured you do have these data elements available to make these kinds of decisions using this 1987 version of ISO messages. Okay, decline notifications. Again, I got this decline message recently. Your purchase of 6305 was declined at SP Parade, which is a new trendy underwear company. Like, why was it declined? And it's like, you know everything about me. You know how much money is in my savings account versus my checking account. You know how much money I used to have in all of those accounts. You know what types of transactions I do. Like, it's like, why? It's like either I expected this transaction to work for some good reason, which I bet you can figure out, and tell me how to make it happen. What do I need to do? Is my card transactions turned off? Do I not have any money in this account? Did I use the wrong address or fat finger the TVV? Like, you know these things. You decline the transaction. And so help me fix it and make it better. Or if I didn't want to do this, right, then it's like help me understand that maybe my card's been compromised and now I do want to turn off card transactions so that no unauthorized use happens for my card. This decline message, much better. $8.47 payment at Target was declined because of insufficient funds. At least it gives me the reason. But as I said, even better would be, okay, what do I do to make this work, right? Like, I'm actively standing in line at the register being embarrassed right now. I need to know as quick as possible how I fix this situation. Declines in general, right, there's different ways that you can show them. Some people show them in the ledger of the app. Some people just show them as notifications or other things. You need to make sure that they look like declines. Like, this one doesn't look like a decline to me. It kind of just looks like a purchase. It says returned, which is a pretty technical term for that transaction not happening. These guys are much better. Red font, crossed out dollar amount. Even, this is the Apple Card, tells me why that transaction didn't go through in the ledger. These are much better, right? So it's like with declines, people they're like desperate to understand. Has any money left my account? How do I make the money leave my account if I'm looking to do that? What are the most likely ways that the transaction doesn't work when it ought to have? Okay, partial approvals. These ones are really fun. I did this on the airport on the way here. Somehow you never have the iPhone charging cable you need. I bought an extremely overpriced one, which was $33. And I swipe my card, and so I get a push notification, your card purchase says you spent $29.86, which is not the amount of the transaction. The transaction is $33, right? And so what the woman at the register said is she was like, it says you still owe me like $3.12. This app knows that too. Like, it knows exactly how much the original transaction is for. It knows exactly how much is in my account. It sent over a partial approval for the balance in my account. But like, you could tell me, and you could tell me even faster than you're telling the merchant. Why does the merchant know before I do that I owe another $3 on this transaction? That I got to be like rifling through my wallet, or that if I don't have another card in my transaction, I got to kind of like walk it back because my balance is not high enough to support this fancy built-in iPhone USB-C charging cord. And I have that here. Explain why it happened, right? There's lots of reasons why you might do a partial approval. But explain that happened. This is funny. I'm going to do an example on pre-auth and partial approval. I just talked to engineers about this. But basically, this is a little crazy. So I put my card in at a gas station, and I got a push notification that said your purchase for $58.29 went through, and then I got a push notification that says your transaction for $6.92 credit went through, when really my receipt says I spent $51.37 on that. And I know what's happening behind the scenes because I know a lot about how card transactions work. And I know that the gas station tried to do a $100 pre-auth on my card and that I didn't have a balance to support that. And so instead, the card app sent over the balance that I did have which was $58.29. And then when I ended up filling up less gas than that, it gave me a credit for the refund. But from a consumer perspective, it does not feel like the gas station did the right thing with my card. It doesn't feel like the card is working for me. It doesn't feel like the card is trustworthy. And I'm going to be less likely to use it in the future. So, those are my examples. The right way to communicate card transactions depends on who your customer is, and it depends on everything. It's like, what are they using the card for? Do they have other cards in their wallet? Where are you? Are you top of wallet? Are you their favorite card to use? Or are you their least favorite card to use? Like, how you approach these is going to depend on all of those specifics, but your users are very smart. They're kind of pushing things to the edge in terms of how they use card transactions. And the more you invest in this experience, specifically it's within our grasp, it's just UI. We have all this data. We just have to interpret it correctly. People will trust you more. They're going to retain longer for your mobile banking apps, and they're going to be much happier as a result. So we can all do better here. Please, I urge you to do so. And thank you for letting me complain to you about this today.